Welcome back. So this should be a relatively short video on fixing the first issue that we observed in the ability system where we could not change the associated input action for the cooldown widget. So as I said in the video, my choice of approaches to this is if I have to change code in the core game or the shooter core plugin, that I would copy the class into shooter core plus, and I would suffix it with plus. So in this case, I had to copy the Lyra action widget, and I made it Lyra action widget plus, as you can see on the screen. In order to get that to compile, I had to add a few more dependency modules in my shooter core plus module because it's dealing with input in this case. Then I had to go back into the editor and duplicate the input action widget, which was a blueprint widget that is built on their Lyra action widget, naming both of those the input action widget plus and the Lyra action widget plus. So as you can see on the bottom right of the screen, I can now have a set associated input node, and I thought I was off to the races. So I simply moved back into my cooldown widget, replaced the input action widget with my new input action widget plus. I made sure to copy over all of the modified settings, which is primarily, I think, the material. And then on my initialize, when I listen for the event, the gameplay message to change my inputs, grab my payload. I still set up my associated action on the cooldown image. Now when I grab my input action widget plus, I can set the data table entry, the default, and the associated input action to the targets, and I felt I was off to go. So let's go take a look at what was happening, and then I'll show you the final fix. So in that case, if I zone in, grab my abilities, open my inventory. If you remember, it was T, Y, U in our key bindings. And so if I take the meteor burst, drop it in, I get T, which was perfectly what I expected. Everything's working fine. However, if I then drag it and drop it on the second one, it stayed T, which was puzzling. As I explored more, remember it's T, Y, U, so I would have expected U, and I got Y, which was, if I go back, then I expected T, and I got U. And then T, and then Y, and then U, which led me to realize that the widget was actually one step before it is displaying whatever the last slot I dropped it on. So I played around a bit more and ended up with realizing, okay, that went to T, that went to Y, and that went to U. So that functioned properly. If I go back here, I expect Y, and I get Y. I go here, I expect U, and I get U. T, and I get T. So what's the difference between these two? And it took me a while to figure out that in the one that was not working, I was loading the table first and then loading the input action second. And that did not work. However, if I loaded the action first and the table second, this one worked. So clearly that level of precision is going to be prone to errors, and I didn't want to leave it like that. So what I did was I looked into the code, and I ended up creating a function that took both the action and the row in and then basically set them. So let's just quickly go. So here's the function here, which is I basically say, okay, give me the action and the row, update both of them, and then rebuild the widget. This way I'm not dealing with the sequencing event problem. The sequencing event problem actually occurs because the child class Lyra action widget, where the associated input action is defined, and the parent class common action widget, where the input table row is defined. So the child, when we change this associated input action, doesn't fire off anything to rebuild the widget. However, in the parent, when you change the input action data table, it fires the rebuild of the widget. So I could, I guess, have just added the rebuild whenever we change the associated input action, but then we would end up with a rebuild of the widget after the data table, followed by a rebuild of the widget after the associate action. And it just felt better to create one function, change both of them, and then do the rebuild. So basically with that modification, I can simplify the logic to look like this, where we refresh both of the values at the same time. It then calls the rebuild, which everything seems then to work out just fine. And that I can, so that was on burst. So burst is working and slide is working. So burst can go into slot 1 and it goes to T. Slide can go into slot 3 and it goes to U. Slide can move to the Y key. Burst can move to the U key. If I put slide on top of the U key, the burst goes away. If I move slide to the T slot, and I'm getting what I wanted. So hopefully that helps everyone. Thanks for watching.